Nana, it's not Martha Stewart. I run the idea of doing this by one of the granddaughters, and what else could she say, but she thought it was cool. This is my legacy to you. So, the whole idea of making cinnamon rolls is to share them. So I've got the recipe. It's from our Aunt Nadine. My mother made good cinnamon rolls, however, it's not her recipe. She made good everything. So this is Aunt Nadine's recipe. One of my daughters, after she left home, told me that my recipes left a lot out, I guess, because I never put the instructions, I just put the ingredients. So here are the ingredients, if you all have the recipe probably. And I have all of the things out that I'm going to demonstrate. 1 yeast cake, right here, or 1 tablespoon of yeast. Then it calls for 1/4 cup of sugar. I add some of that to the yeast because it activates the yeast faster. I will dissolve that in 1/2 cup of warm water. Nope, 1/4 cup of warm water. And the water can be fairly warm, but not too hot or it'll kill the yeast action. You can usually test it on your wrist. So I'm stirring that in with the sugar and the yeast. Then I'm going to put the rest of the sugar in here, or else I forget it. It calls for 3 tablespoons of shortening or Crisco, and they're marked off right here just fine. I've already melted that for convenience, and then it calls for 1/2 cup of milk, scalded or heated, and I do that in the microwave. I'm heating that for 30 seconds just to get it coagulated. Then it calls for 2 eggs. I thought I knew about the birds and the bees, but I don't. My grandsons know about the bees, but I always separate the membrane, which in my mind is a baby chicken, and whip them up. That has allowed the milk and the shortening to mix together. I already have the eggs in here, and I can add that as soon as the yeast is starting to rise. I can add that. It calls for 3 cups of flour, which I have measured out, but there's a lot to the barometric pressure because yeast rises faster in a higher elevation. It took me a while to figure that out in St. George because we're 2,600 altitude down there and we're 4,500 in Cache Valley. So I have to let them rise quite a bit longer. I had to call the county agent to find that out. Again, I don't know what determines it, but it doesn't always take the full 3 cups of flour. And so I add the 2 and then slowly add the 3rd one. As you make them, you'll know how much you can add the flour gently. And like I say, it doesn't always take the 3 cups. Okay, that is dissolved enough. I'm going to add it to the yeast, or to the eggs and the milk and the shortening. This contains 3/4 teaspoon of salt. These work well also in a bread mixer, bread baker. And you don't have to have a purple one, but it makes you happier if you do. This is the 3rd cup, but I haven't used all of it. Now that's still quite sticky, but I'm going to put on my gloves and then add it gradually. Sometimes I use 1 cup of whole wheat flour and 2 of white. This is my next and very important part. I don't like dough under my fingernails. My husband Grumpy tells about an older lady from the old country who said, you must bake bread at least once a week to get to clean the dirt out from under your fingernails. So I'm again it. And these are actually beauty salon gloves, but whatever you like to do to keep your fingernails clean. Gradually add some of this flour. I've done them long enough, I know when that's enough. It doesn't stick to the pan. It'll still be a soft dough. And that's probably all the flour I'm going to add. It will take a little more flour when I roll it out. One year, everyone in the family gave me shower hats for Christmas from the hotels because I asked for them and I appreciate them. So then I use one of them and put it aside to rise. This is how much flour I had left out of the 3 cups. It's maybe a third, I'm not sure. I'll use that. This takes out a lot of frustrations. Oh, I have something too. This was given to me as a wedding present from an old gentleman in Hyde Park, and he brought it over to me personally, and he said, if you never make a pie, it'll still come handy when your husband misbehaves. I think of him every time I use that. And that's over 60 years ago. This dough does have a cup of whole wheat flour in it, and so it has a slight beige color to it. I used to use melted butter, but over time I found out just room temperature butter works better because then when you roll it up like a jelly roll, it doesn't squish out. So I spread it generously. And then I sprinkled cinnamon very generously. This is from Lee's Market. And some people may not like it this strong. I used to analyze the cinnamon rolls at Utah State University about once a week to analyze them, and they used a lot of cinnamon. This is brown sugar, and I use it quite generously too. You could put just granulated sugar and less cinnamon if that's what you like. Then I like nuts, chopped nuts. I use pecans and raisins. There are many in my family who don't like either one, but they can always pick them out. I would guess this is a half a cup, I'm not sure. And I broke my nut chopper yesterday. And this recipe also makes a great orange roll. I always soak the raisins just enough to take away the hardness, and then if necessary you can blot out the moisture with paper towel. This recipe makes a dozen medium-sized ones. They're not huge. And I usually make at least 3 times the recipe, so you have to do the math. I try to gauge them to get 6 out of each side. And here is the real secret. You have to use purple thread to cut them. And my little great-grandson, Miles Anders, knows that. And it needs to be sprayed also. Some of the filling will spill out, but I try to put it face down. And then these will need to rise for about at least a half hour, maybe more, until they double. The recipe says to bake at 400, I think, for 11 to 12, but you need to know your ovens, because sometimes I only do them at 375, 10 or 11, but I do watch them baking. I frost them while they're still warm, but not hot. Cindy said I never put enough frosting. Another thing I do is try to tuck the tail ends under. As you can see, they're flipping out. They won't open like that one's doing. Anyway, then I kind of flatten them down so they're all approximately the same height. Then I usually put the tea towel over them while they rise. Okay, after the cinnamon rolls are baked and slightly cooled, I don't have a recipe. I started with a quarter pound, and I'm going to use the rest of this because I'm going to make a lot of frosting. Ordinarily with this single recipe, you wouldn't need near that butter, so, and you could even make it with just milk. This is powdered sugar. And again, I don't measure, but a little drop of vanilla. And I use evaporated milk. And if I get it too thick, I add more sugar. Okay, now we've got to wait till they're ready to come out of the oven. Okay, I previously cut between the rolls, and these are still quite warm, so the frosting is going to melt down between them. And they're browned about the same way on the bottom. And if this video doesn't make it plain and easy, come to my house and do it with me. I don't know if that's enough frosting to suit Cindy or not. But the real secret is to share them while they're warm. Merry Christmas. Remember, I love you all.